You know, when we think about winemaking, we probably imagine these beautiful, sun-drenched vineyards, right? Or maybe those cool, quiet barrel rooms. But what about that last critical step? The one that happens right before that bottle of wine starts its trip to your table. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden science of bottling wine.
See, bottling is so much more than just, pouring wine into a bottle. It's literally the winemaker's last chance to protect everything they've poured their heart and soul into. The second that seal goes on, that's it. Their work is over. It is a total moment of no return.
So, with that much at stake, you have to wonder, right? How on earth do they make sure the bottle you open is just as perfect as the day it was sealed, even if that's months or years down the road? Well, it all boils down to this amazing blend of science and incredible precision.
All right, so let's dive into that final hurdle. This is where every single decision counts.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Any little mistake, any slight instability, any hidden problem that gets sealed inside that bottle, well, it's there for good. The enologist, the winemaker, they can't go back and fix it. So getting this stage absolutely perfect, it's completely non-negotiable.
So to make sure there are no surprises later, every single wine has to pass what's basically a final health exam. This is where they go to war against all those invisible flaws before they even have a chance to show up.
Okay, so check this out. This is basically the winemaker's dashboard. It's like they're monitoring the wine's vital signs. They're looking at pH, because if that's off, you can get oxidation. They measure something called volatile acidity to stop any spoilage. They make sure there's enough free sulfur dioxide, which acts as a preservative. And they even check for any leftover sugar to be absolutely positive that the fermentation is completely done. It's a full-on, data-driven physical before that wine goes anywhere near a bottle. But the lab tests get even more specific. And this first one, it deals with something I'm pretty sure we've all done. Come on, admit it. Have you ever left a bottle of white wine in a hot car? Or maybe you've thrown it in the freezer to cool it down super fast for a party. Yeah. Well, those big temperature swings can actually cause some real problems.
It's this thing called protein breakdown. Basically, if there are unstable proteins in the wine, they can kind of clump together when they get too hot or too cold, and that makes the wine look all hazy and cloudy. So to stop that from happening, winemakers run this crazy stress test. They literally heat a sample up to a blistering 80 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. If it comes out the other side still looking perfectly clear, they know it's stable enough to handle whatever you might throw at it.
Okay, here's another classic one. You ever get to the end of a great bottle of white wine and you notice what look like tiny little glass crystals at the bottom? What in the world are those?
Well, it turns out this isn't a flaw at all. They're called tartaric crystals, and they're a totally natural part of wine. In fact, you probably have them in your kitchen. It's the exact same stuff as cream of tartar. But here's the thing. We, the consumers, expect our wine to be crystal clear and bright. So even though they're harmless, winemakers go to great lengths to make sure they don't form in the bottle.
And how do they do that? With something called a cold stability test. It's pretty straightforward, actually. They just freeze a sample of the wine at -5 degrees Celsius for a full 24 hours. If crystals show up in the lab, they know they have to treat the wine so it doesn't happen later in your fridge. It's all about making sure it has that beautiful, clean look we all expect.
All right, now for one that might really surprise you. Imagine this. You buy a beautiful, pale, straw-colored Sauvignon Blanc. You stick it in your wine rack. A few months later, you go to open it and, wait a minute, the color's different. So, can a white wine actually turn pink?
The answer is yes, it absolutely can. It's this oxidative thing called pinking, and it can cause the wine's color to shift to this sort of gray pinkish color. You can imagine, for a winemaker, this is a total nightmare. It takes their gorgeous pale wine and makes it look, well, just not right.
So what's going on here? Well, the science points to a compound that's usually found in red grapes. Sometimes, though, tiny traces of it can end up in white wines. And if that wine gets exposed to a bit too much oxygen, this compound can sort of wake up, and boom, it changes the wine's color.
And this is where you see just how proactive these winemakers are. To figure out if a wine is at risk, they do something pretty clever. They basically force it to oxidize right there in the lab by adding a little hydrogen peroxide to a sample. Then they wait 24 hours. If the color has changed, they know that wine is at risk, and they can treat it before it ever gets into a bottle.
Okay, so once the wine has passed every single one of its tests, it's time for the main event, the bottling line. And this is a high-stakes game of millimeters and pressure.
0 plus or minus 0.1 bar. So what does this tiny number mean? Well, it's one of the single most critical measurements in the entire process. We're talking about an unbelievably tight tolerance here.
This is the target for the vacuum pressure right inside the bottle's neck. See, as the cork is pushed in, a machine creates a tiny vacuum to suck out any air. Getting this pressure exactly right is absolutely crucial. If there's too much pressure, the cork could start to leak, or even worse, it could slowly push itself right out of the bottle over time.
And that brings us to the final, critical decision the winemaker has to make. They need to choose the right guardian to protect their wine for the rest of its journey.
And this, my friends, is the great debate: cork versus screw cap. On one side, you've got natural cork. It's traditional, it's romantic, and it lets the wine breathe just a tiny bit, which can be great for aging. But it comes with that dreaded risk of cork taint from a compound called TCA, which can totally ruin a wine. On the other side, you have the screw cap. It's a perfect seal, which is fantastic for preserving those fresh, fruity aromas, especially in white wines. There's zero risk of cork taint, it's cheaper, and it's recyclable. But it sometimes still has this reputation for being, well, for cheaper wines.
So really, it boils down to this: a choice between tradition and technical perfection. And what the winemaker chooses often comes down to the style of the wine they've made and, frankly, where in the world they plan on selling it. But hold on, it's not just a two-horse race anymore. Synthetic stoppers are a huge player in the game now. They're made from food-safe plastics, and they're designed to look and feel just like natural cork. But the big selling point? They offer perfect, uniform consistency every time, and they are completely free of TCA. They don't let any air in, so they're awesome at keeping the wine fresh and preserving its flavor. For a winemaker, that's a super reliable, predictable seal.
When you get right down to it, though, they all have the same job. It doesn't matter if it's cork, screw cap, or synthetic. The purpose of that stopper is to seal the wine and protect it from its two biggest enemies: oxidation and contamination.
So here's something to think about. The next time you open a bottle of wine, will you look at that closure a little differently? Will you see it not just as a lid, but as the final guardian that's been protecting all that art and science on its long journey to you? It really is the silent hero, making sure the story of that wine has the perfect ending, right in your glass.